What is up, everybody? Thank you so much for tuning in to another edition of the Touchline Talk Show. Plenty to get to today. Before I jump in, as always, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of the content I put out every single week on YouTube. Two-part show today, like normal. Going to talk about midweek action, both in the Premier League and the FA Cup to start, and then going to look back on MLS opening weekend. Felt like this was a good time considering Champions League is going to ramp back up here. Probably not going to get around to too much MLS talk for a little while. So, going to just jump to some conclusions. Are we buying or selling the result of opening weekend? But first, there is midweek action in Europe to attend to, starting with Arsenal's destruction of Everton. Arsenal were not great in the first half of this game until Bukayo Saka scored to put them on the board and kind of get them control of this game. When he took that touch, I honestly thought he had gone too wide, but he's Bukayo Saka, so he just figured it out, and that's one of those shots that there's just no way to appreciate how difficult it is because he makes it look so easy. You're not supposed to be able to do what he did from that angle and just blow the ball past Jordan Pickford like that. I'm not even going to blame Pickford for that goal. That was just brilliant from Bukayo Saka. And then Saka pokes the ball loose, Martinelli finishes, and all of a sudden it's 2-0. And then it just unravels from there in the second half for Everton. There isn't too much to say on this game overall because obviously Arsenal were deserving winners and took care of business. Just a couple points I want to make. First, on the Everton side of this, Everton did have chances before Arsenal started scoring. You could even argue that for the first 30 or so minutes of this game, Everton were the better team. The difference is Arsenal have, Leandro Trossard, Gabriel Martinelli, and Bukayo Saka up front. And Everton don't. And they got into dangerous areas, they created opportunities, and then just wasted all of them because they just do not have enough in attack. And that will continue to be my concern with Everton as they continue this relegation battle. I'm all in on Sean Dyche. I laid out exactly why they should have hired him. Because you're not getting out of this. You're not saving yourself through scoring goals. You save yourself through being organized defensively, which it's so far so good under Sean Dyche. You take the results that you've gotten so far. But for Everton to be anything other than a relegation candidate, even if they survive this season, they got to figure out the attacking end of the field. And it just struck me watching this game. It's not like they didn't have ideas. It's not like they didn't put the ball into dangerous areas. It just fell apart immediately when they actually got the ball into those areas. They just, it was kind of self-inflicted mistakes some of the time. Whether it was not playing the ball to the right person, a bad touch that kind of took the ball out of danger, whatever it might have been. There were some good moments. They just couldn't capitalize on them, and then Arsenal went and did their thing, and here we are. On the Arsenal side of this, 5 points up on Manchester City, 13 games left for both teams. I do think everybody kind of went a little too far in the other direction after Arsenal had that little slump. Now, it was fair to wonder if they were going to be able to come out of it the way they needed to. That is a question that I was asking as well. But I keep harping on this point with Manchester City. This was still about Arsenal, and can Arsenal start picking up wins again? Because your margin of error was gone at that point. But you don't need to win every single game because Manchester City are dropping points here and there this season. And so Arsenal have gotten back where they are applying the pressure on Manchester City. They're winning consistently. And so now they've built themselves this little bit of a cushion where weird things like the first loss to Everton can happen and you're going to be okay. Because it's possible, of course, but I don't see Manchester City winning 12 of these 13 games. I think it's going to be more like 10 or 11 with a draw or two in there. Arsenal are in great position. And when you get a win like this against a tricky opponent that, could easily be one of those where you have the better chances, you just end 0-0 because you can't put the ball into the net. To come in and score 4 goals in a game that didn't start all that well, they look like Arsenal again. And when they look like Arsenal again, they're the best team in this league, arguably the best team in the world. I have shifted my opinion on this to defend Napoli on that one just because of how consistent they've been. But all of this, there are these worries about, right? Arsenal, did they kind of run out of steam? Do these players have enough left? That's why you bring in a Jorginho. Thomas Partey got to come off the bench in this game as he works his way back. Leandro Trossard is starting now. You lost your striker. Eddie Nketiah is kind of going through a rough patch. So what do? That's why you go sign a proven Premier League winger in Leandro Trossard and throw him up there, because now you still have 3 guys that you feel really good about in attack, even though your sort of option A as your backup striker is a little bit of a slump, and your primary striker is still injured. Those are the kind of, and again, Jorginho, right? Big moment. He fills in admirably. That's why you go get proven Premier League guys. They didn't need to swing for the fences. They need to get a couple extra pieces. They got those pieces. Now you can hopefully rest guys at least a little bit here or there. They're the clear favorites. They were before this game. They are after this game. It's theirs to lose once again. And again, 13 games left. That's all. And if they can find a way to at least hold City to a draw, they will be odds-on favorites. It's not done yet, but they look like Arsenal again, and that is all you can ask for if you're Mikel Arteta. It's one of those things, right? There are ups and downs in seasons. They had a really rough patch, but they are back looking like themselves. Got to give credit to these players, and this is what I continue to sort of back them on and believe in, is that they have mentally, they have what it takes. I know that almost all these guys haven't won before, outside of the Manchester City guys and now Jorginho. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I don't think he had. I mean, he's got a Champions League, right? So they've got high level winning experience. The rest of these guys don't really. But you see, every single time they hit adversity, they come right back and start putting together wins again. Give them all the credit in the world. They were fantastic in this game. Get another win as they try to get even closer to winning the Premier League. The thing I really want to talk about for a couple minutes here is what happened in the FA Cup 5th round. The quarterfinals are now set. Your quarterfinalists are Manchester City, Manchester United, Brighton, Fulham, League 2 side Grimsby Town, and 3 of the top 4 teams in the championship in the form of Burnley, Sheffield United, and Blackburn Rovers. Manchester City cruised past Bristol City. Not too much to say there. Phil Foden got some goals. They looked like Manchester City. Good for them. United got 2 late goals. Had to come from behind to beat West Ham, and then sealed it with a third one in the very final moments of the game. Not the best performance in the world, but they really did turn it on after they got behind, deserving winners in the end, as they continue to have, 1 trophy captured, still on the periphery of the Premier League title race, still in the Europa League, still in the FA Cup, continuing the hunt for extra trophies this season. Evan Ferguson scores to get Brighton past Stoke City. They could have added a second, had some opportunities, just couldn't take advantage, but they get through anyway. Fulham, 2 brilliant goals to get past Leeds United. Probably didn't deserve to win by 2 on the balance of play. Leeds had some good moments in this game. Had some, unfortunate breaks with offsides and things like that. Tyler Adams has the turnover that leads to Paulinho's opener, where he curls a ball from 35 plus yards out past Meslier. I'm not even going to get on Meslier too much for that, because that's anticipating your team having possession and Tyler Adams giving possession away. You got to help your goalkeeper there. Your goalkeeper was doing what your goalkeeper was supposed to. And then the second one, Manor Solomon, I mean, my goodness. Everybody's talking Marcus Rashford, Matoma at Brighton. Manor Solomon is just on another level right now. what he is doing quietly for Fulham. And I know it's not, what Rashford's been doing where he's come back from the World Cup and he just scores every single game, it feels like. But Manor Solomon is having himself a time right now for a Fulham team that is just continuing to push on, the top 5, 6 spots in the Premier League, still in the FA Cup, and he gets an excellent goal in this game as well to get Fulham through. Grimsby Town get past Southampton thanks to 2 penalties. Southampton ultimately pull a goal back. Theo Walcott thinks he has an equalizer. It's ruled out for offside, and Grimsby Town survive. Part of me thinks this is ultimately a good thing for Southampton. You got too much going on in the Premier League to have to worry about these cup competitions. It's more miles on the legs, more lineup decisions that have to be made. Your focus gets split. And the other part of it is you had an opportunity here. And I'm going to get to that a little bit more once we talk about kind of these final 8 teams remaining. Obviously not just expecting to beat the League 2 team that you're up against in the 5th round of the FA Cup, but you did see the boost that came with their Carabao Cup run. And the FA Cup has the opportunity to provide that same spark. You never know kind of which way it's going to go. Is it going to take away from what you're trying to do in the league and put some extra miles on guys' legs? Or is it going to give you the kind of that boost of confidence, a little bit of momentum that's going to boost your performance domestically in the league? It's kind of can go either way. Southampton don't have that opportunity to find out anymore because they are gone. They did come pretty close to trying to rescue this game. I don't think this is the end of the world, is ultimately where I come down on this. Yes, it's another disappointing result in a disappointing season, but your focus is not the FA Cup at this point. You got to put all your eggs in the avoiding relegation basket, obviously. So, Burnley go up a man right at the end of the first half, scoring the 90th minute to advance. One of your upsets, Sheffield United, thanks to some fancy footwork from Njai, who comes off the bench, upset Tottenham and get through. Was not one of those games where Tottenham just didn't show up. They had some chances. They at least created shots. Were they great offensively? No. Harry Kane came in. He had an opportunity at the end he couldn't capitalize on. I don't draw too much away from this game from a Tottenham standpoint in terms of where they're at and their hopes for getting into the top 4 qualifying for the Champions League, because they have had this really good stretch here. They seem to be picking up some steam and playing better. This is, as it always is with Tottenham, about the trophy drought, and I feel like every season I talk myself into Tottenham's going to win the FA Cup, and going to have to wait at least one more year for that one because they are also out. And then finally, Blackburn Rovers beat Leicester. If you would like to know why Leicester are where they are in the Premier League table, all you have to do is watch this game. It could have been 4 or 5 with the amount of mistakes, horrendous defending, any kind of defensive error you can think of. You saw it from Leicester, specifically in the first half of this game. It should have been at least 3-0. And Blackburn Rovers were good. Got to give them credit where credit is due. But this game was decided because Leicester handed it to them. And then nearly got themselves back in it through the best goal scorer in the FA Cup, Kelechi Iheanacho. He scores again, nearly get a second, and somehow almost found a way to rescue this game. But they had no business winning. Blackburn are deserved winners just because Leicester handed it to them. It is astonishing to see. It looked like that Leicester back line at the beginning of the season when they couldn't stop anybody. I mean, getting caught on the ball, misplayed passes, and just not defending. It it was something to watch. You hadn't seen that from Leicester in a while, but it reared its ugly head again in this game, and so they are out. Your matchups for the quarterfinals: Manchester City, Burnley. Vincent Company gets a homecoming. That's going to be really cool to see. Manchester United, Fulham. I'm really glad we got this game. This is a great opportunity for Fulham, obviously, and it's a team that you will go into this game feeling like they can beat Manchester United. I wanted I want something other than a United City final, and so getting a Premier League team against one of those teams should increase the likelihood of that happening. So I was pleased with that draw. Brighton get Grimsby, and then that leaves Sheffield United and Blackburn Rovers, again, the second and fourth place teams as I speak in the championship. So you got 8 teams here. The 2 Manchester clubs, which United trying to do what Liverpool did last season, win both domestic trophies. Manchester City trying to come away from the season with a trophy. I've talked a little bit about this, but in all likelihood, this is your best opportunity. And if I remember correctly, the last season they failed to win a trophy was Pep Guardiola's first. This is the kind of competition that, no, it's assuming they don't win the Champions League and don't win the Premier League. Does it turn your season from a bad one into a at least okay one? No, but it does salvage it to a certain extent. It gives you something to walk away with, I should say. So you've got those significances for the Manchester clubs. Then Brighton and Fulham. Brighton have made some deep runs in this tournament recently, but this is a glorious opportunity. You're playing a League Two side in the quarterfinals. You are absolutely flying right now. This should be a semifinal appearance, and at that point, anything is possible. And for Fulham, again, just an opportunity to capitalize on what you've done this season and to actually walk away with something tangible. Now, it certainly appears they're going to also get into Europe, so that's going to be something tangible to walk away with as well. But there is so much value in winning a trophy. Just ask Newcastle and what that getting to that Carabao Cup final meant. I know they ultimately didn't get to lift the trophy, but it's terrific when you look at this and you see these kind of opportunities. And then obviously Sheffield United, Blackburn Rovers. If any of these 3 championship teams can win this thing, that's an incredible story in and of itself. And so you just look at this, and Fulham can absolutely beat United. Let's say that happens. You're looking at Manchester City and 4 teams that aren't supposed to end up in finals, playing for trophies. Instead of it, because it feels like, particularly in the FA Cup, I know Watford got there when City demolished them a few years ago, but it feels like we've had a lot of Chelsea's, Arsenal's, Liverpool's, City's, United's, unsurprisingly. And then you had, and when Leicester won, Leicester beat Chelsea in the final. The idea of having this thing so wide open and only having 2 quote-unquote big clubs left, if one of them gets knocked out, if they get drawn against each other in the semifinals, you could see a really special FA Cup final that hopefully brings some of the intrigue and magic back, because it's not just 2 of the big 6. And it's not just a team that, there was something special when Leicester won. And that's a team that has a Premier League title and a Champions League appearance and has played in European competition recently. Obviously, they're not the level of the big 6, but you replace Leicester with Fulham or Brighton. If Brighton, after this season and Graham Potter leaving and them still continuing to play so well, ends up with a trophy out of this, this is what you want in the FA Cup. You've got the big names still, but you've got some incredible stories here, and not just incredible stories, but again, Burnley are flying in the championship. Sheffield United are also well on their way to earning automatic promotion, and Blackburn Rovers could very possibly win the playoff. These 3 teams could absolutely all end up in the Premier League next season. They aren't just 3 teams from the championship. They are 3 teams that aren't that far behind the Southamptons and Leeds Uniteds of the world right now. And so we're going to get to see what this new look Burnley looks like, playing kind of the inspiration for it in, Pep Guardiola and Manchester City. And we're going to get at least one championship team in the semifinals because we got two of them playing each other. Go look at what Blackburn just did to Leicester. Now, I know Leicester, I'm very much of the opinion Leicester did it to themselves more than anything else, but Blackburn took advantage. The gap between the top of the championship, especially I feel like this season, the top of the championship and the bottom of the Premier League is not all that great. And so if things fall right, you could end up with a fascinating set of semifinals with a bunch of teams that nobody expected to be there. And it's great to have one of those every once in a while. We may very well get one this season in the FA Cup. I'm going to take my first break. When I come back, all things MLS. I've got 6 sort of takeaways or results from the opening weekend of the season. Which of them should you buy? Which of them should you sell? I will address that next. You're watching the Touchline Talk Show. Don't go anywhere. And welcome back to the Touchline Talk Show. Thank you so much for tuning in. Before I jump into Major League Soccer, be sure to hit that subscribe button. I want to mention that one more time so you don't miss any of the content I put out every single week. Okay, we're going to do some buy or sell with Major League Soccer, and specifically the results of the first weekend of the season. Not necessarily the performances, but kind of looking at the table and how the games went. And I wanted to lay that out first because that shapes some of how I approach this. So, 3 teams, 3 results to buy, 3 to sell. The first couple buys are not surprising. The first one being the Philadelphia Union. They did concede the first goal and then proceeded to make a really good Columbus Crew team look pretty bad. I thought there was a lot of good from the Crew, particularly in the first 30, 45 minutes of this game. And then they didn't do much of anything. And the Union press got going, and much like in the Eastern Conference Final, it was just sort of an avalanche. They score 1, they score 2, Daniel Gazdag gets penalties, and all of a sudden you look up and it's 4-1. There is no reason to make this more complicated than it needs to be. They are the best team in the Eastern Conference, and it is that simple. They should expect to win every single home game this season. I don't care who goes into Subaru Park. And the other part of this, that if you wanted an additional reason to buy them after actually seeing them on the field with, the same starting 11 they had last season, it's that they came out and did that after what happened at MLS Cup. And it's a fascinating sort of psychological question of how do you handle having, 2 hands on the trophy and then giving it away. Part of this is Jim Curtin's man management, his ability to motivate his team, because I have the utmost confidence that he's going to have this team in the right space mentally. And part of this is that somebody out there did him a favor and had that quote in The Athletic that Jim Curtin found that he shared with the entire team about how some executive doesn't actually think they're that good. You provided them with the extra fuel in case they needed the little bit of a chip on their shoulder in addition to the unfinished business they have after last season. Another team, another coach, I would be much more worried about sort of the hangover and the disappointment of that. But not Jim Curtin. And clearly not this team, because you saw what they did coming out in their first game, beating Columbus handily. The first team I'm selling, and I talked a little bit about this on my weekend roundup, is St. Louis's win in Austin. I laid out and went through the goals. This is one of my big concerns coming out of the game is set piece, one of the more bizarre goals you're ever going to see, and a really good moment from Klaus. Got to give him credit in the third. If he can consistently do that, that changes the equation. But the way in which they scored their 3 goals is not sustainable. You get set pieces every once in a while. I don't see any reason to believe they're going to be, the world's best set piece team. You're not getting the second goal ever again. So I just need to see more before I believe this team can score the goals they need to. And, it's not like they were phenomenal in the back. They gave up 2 goals. It's also this team's first time playing together. I mean, they're going to get a little bit better defensively just when they get more comfortable. But the other part of this that I'm going to keep coming back to is Roman Bürki. Not Roman Bürki just as a goalkeeper, but Roman Bürki as kind of the big signing for your club. Investing that much in a goalkeeper that hasn't played regularly in a couple of years, that got chipped by Sebastian Giroussi in this first game, that is not the best goalkeeper in MLS. I didn't come away from this game going, he's going to be a difference maker. Maybe I'm wrong on that. But if you're investing that much in a goalie, that goalie needs to be better than, your Andre Blake's or your Petrovic's, whoever you want to call the best goalie in this league. He's got to be a difference maker like those guys. And I'm just not sure Roman Bürki is. So I'm giving this more time before I start putting stock into this. Again, it's one game. Let's just wait and see. I need to see something more convincing to believe they actually have a shot at making the playoffs. It's entirely possible they are better than anybody thought they would be. And that they're more like the 10th best team in the West instead of, 13, 14. That I will buy. And from a confidence, from a marketing, establishing yourself standpoint, getting this kind of win against an Austin team that so many people are picking to make MLS Cup is a great way to start and a great way to lead into your home opener. That part of it matters. The fact that you delivered something, you got people excited immediately, so there's this extra attention coming into that home opener. And that people saw that this team can win games in Major League Soccer. They were impressive and better than I thought. There's just a long way to go between being better than I thought and being a playoff team. Team number 2 I'm buying, Seattle Sounders. The Seattle Sounders were the only team to win by more than 3. Jordan Morris scored twice. And they did this without Raul Ruidiaz, who is working his way back. They don't have the CONCACAF Champions League to deal with. This is also the Seattle Sounders coming off a season where they missed the playoffs. I was not surprised at all that they looked this good coming out of the gate. Again, having João Paulo back helps with that. Also, part of this is that for whatever reason, Colorado has just really struggled defensively last season, and it obviously continued into this game. So my only hesitation would be, does this mean the Sounders are the best team in the West? I don't put a lot of stock in a win over Colorado. But from the Sounders are back to being the Sounders, and the Sounders are one of the favorites to win MLS Cup, and the Sounders are one of the top teams you don't want to play in the playoffs, yeah, I'm sold on all of that already. Assuming they stay healthy. Because they don't have the extra distractions. They're trying to make up for last season. This is once they get everybody healthy, this is a better team than last season's, I would argue, especially with João Paulo not being available if you kind of take him out of that because they only had him for a few games. Which means this is the best roster the Sounders have put together because last year's at full strength was the best the Sounders have ever put together. That matters. There might not be another team in this league that has that many. I mean, the Union are the only team that's close in terms of that many players who are that good compared to everybody else at their position. And most of them are higher up the field, which is where they differ from the Union. Ladero, Morris, Roldan, Ruidiaz, Albert Rusnak, and João Paulo. That is your starting attack in midfield. They're going to be right up there at the top of the Western Conference. It's that simple. Team number 2, I am selling DC United. I talked a lot about this on my weekend roundup as well. That win was much more about Toronto's defending being just as bad as it was last season than anything that DC United did. I mean, go look at the goals and how welcoming Toronto were on a couple of those occasions. I just can't come out of that game going, here comes DC United. Maybe they're actually going to be good this year. It's possible because at this point with this league, you just don't know. There are about 4 teams you can feel pretty good about. And outside of that, there's just nobody you can write off at this point because who knows what happens. It is a strange, wonderful league in that sense. And I do buy the importance of this win. I will say that. Coming off of last season, Wayne Rooney gets his first full year in charge. To get 3 points on the board, to get some momentum, some confidence, similar to St. Louis, similar to Atlanta. I'm not putting any stock in the win itself, but I will buy what the win means in the short term. But this is not about the short term. This is about, am I buying or selling this game, this result, changing how I feel about this team? And I'm not there with DC United. I need to see a lot more before I believe this is anything other than one of those weird things that happens in Major League Soccer sometimes. And if Toronto keeps defending this way, I'm selling this even more because I bought Toronto coming into the season, but I will quickly jump off that bandwagon if that is what they look like in a month defensively. It's game 1. I still think they're going to figure it out. But they did DC a lot of favors, and that's one of the big reasons why I am selling DC United. Third team that I am buying. A little more out there, but still not all that shocking. It's Nashville. I was really tempted to put Nashville in my top 5 of the East. You can go check out that video if you want to see who ended up there instead. I just couldn't bring myself to do it. They probably would have been 6, maybe 7 for me. Because they don't have a goal scorer outside of the best player in the league. And Ake Lobu was supposed to be that guy. It didn't work. You just make life really difficult for yourself when you don't have second and third goal scoring options. That being said, I know it was a center back, but they did score before Hani Mukhtar came on the field. He then proceeded to set up a second goal almost immediately. And their midfield looked really good. They performed really well from front to back in this game. They didn't have the quality they needed up front to finish the game off until Mukhtar came in. That's going to be the problem. That's going to be the question. It's why I can't see them finishing any higher than 5th in the East. But if you can keep this 11 together, get Mukhtar back healthy, ready to play a full 90, they're onto something. They will always be difficult out in the playoffs because they kind of match the formula you need defensively with your difference maker, all that kind of stuff. And coming out of this NYCFC game, I'm giving more credit to Nashville than criticism to NYCFC. I was not high on NYCFC coming into the season with everything they lost. They weren't good in this game. I do think they are better than they looked, though. I think that had more to do with how good Nashville was defensively than how bad NYCFC will be. And now James Sands is coming back. That's going to help a little bit. They don't have enough. But they could still absolutely get into the playoffs. I think they're in the 8 to 10 range in the East. So, is it the big statement win for Nashville? No. They're going to play much better teams. But starting that way, looking that good, without your best player, the best player in the league, the reigning MVP, even starting, is a really, really good sign. I'm buying Nashville. I think they're going to have a really good season and they're going to surprise some people. I was surprised sort of going through all of the MLS soccer.com people's predictions how low some of them had Nashville. To me, Nashville is easily a top 7 team in the East. I wouldn't be shocked if they crack the top 5. Top 4, different conversation. And the final team I am selling their first week, opening weekend result is the Houston Dynamo. The Houston Dynamo went into Cincinnati and outperformed again, this, and I had Cincinnati finish second in my Eastern Conference power rankings. I'm on board with Cincinnati too. But again, one of these teams, people are talking about Supporters Shield, people are talking about getting to MLS Cup, people are talking about they're the best team in the East outside the Union. Houston went in there and outplayed them by every metric except for the scoreboard, which only matters so much. I get it. But one game in against a team that has plenty of continuity, right? It's not like Cincinnati is integrating all these new pieces. What makes Cincinnati so dangerous is they're getting a full season of the team you saw the second half of last year. You still got the same attackers. Matt Miazga knows what he's doing now. All of that stuff. To come in there with a new team and play that well against a team that has played together now for a while has to matter. You have to be so happy if you're Ben Olsen, even though you lost. Because that's one of the 4 or 5 most difficult games on your schedule. And they got a goal to get themselves back in it. Yes, they gave up what ultimately turned out to be the winner. And I like the offseason additions and what the Dynamo did. They brought in a bunch of MLS Cup winners, led by Artur. It's not the most inspiring team in the world on paper, but it's better than people give them credit for. With some of the questions in the West in terms of, what's going on with Minnesota, for example, with an expansion team in St. Louis, can Dallas replicate what they did last season? Is San Jose going to be any better? There are some playoff spots to be had, I feel like. Not necessarily at the top of the conference, but I would not be surprised at all if the Dynamo make the playoffs. I'm getting to the point where I'm considering predicting it. Need to see more from them again. This is one game trying to draw these conclusions, but I am selling that loss, and I am buying Dynamo stock at this point. I thought they were really good in a game that nobody is supposed to win. You're going to obviously have much better opportunities moving forward. And, it's going to be... And then you got your Real Salt Lakes, your Vancouver Whitecaps. There are all these teams in the West that could be good, could be okay, might be pretty bad. And we're talking probably about the 7-8, those final few playoff spots, 7, 8, 9. But I really think the Dynamo have a chance to sneak in there. And I feel much, much more confident about that after what they did in Cincinnati. Keep an eye on this team. They could end up being... They're not going to be kind of a factor in the overall landscape, but one of the more intriguing teams in terms of kind of who is going to take that next... Who's going to be the next team to kind of recycle back to the top of the league. You saw, right, Cincinnati had their going from consistently being the worst defensive team in the league to what they did last season. They're kind of the team that's cycling to the top now. And you're trying, the Galaxy are trying to get there. I think the Dynamo could be starting on that path. That's how impressed I was with what they did in Cincinnati. Of course, it's one game. I may want to take all that back in 2 weeks. But for right now, I am selling the Dynamo's lost, buying the Dynamo stock. Watch out for them the next couple weeks. See if they can continue these performances and actually pick up some points. That is all for MLS buy or sell. Going to take one more break. And when I come back, the weekend look ahead, all kinds of stuff happening in Europe and in MLS. I will set the stage for everything. You are watching the Touchline Talk Show. Don't go anywhere. Sorry about that. Apologize for not having audio there. We will start this back over. Welcome to the weekend look ahead. Thanks so much for tuning in. Starting in England, Newcastle at Manchester City. This is your biggest game of the week. Kicks things off Saturday morning. Newcastle's got to find a way to start picking up 3 points instead of one. Seems like they're just drawing every Premier League game at this point. And Manchester City obviously are trying to catch Arsenal. Speaking of Arsenal, they host Bournemouth also on Saturday. West Ham at Brighton, a team in the relegation zone, a team trying to see just how high they can get into the Premier League table. And then two more games to mention. Leeds at Chelsea also on Saturday. Want to mention this not only from a Leeds standpoint of being in the relegation race, but also Chelsea. I'm going to save... I've given my Graham Potter spiel. I'll probably give it again if they get eliminated from the Champions League. But at this point, he could be fired any week, any game. It could be the end. And if you lose at home to a relegation candidate, that might just do it. So, wanted to at least recognize this could be the end of the Graham Potter era at Chelsea. I don't think it will be, but it's a possibility. And then your other high-profile game, Manchester United at Liverpool. Liverpool get a win midweek that I did not mention earlier, and Manchester United just continue to roll along. Of course, it's one of the best rivalries in the Premier League, so you've got that to look forward to on Sunday. In Spain, going to cheat a little bit because Barcelona and Real Madrid play on Thursday. First leg of the Copa del Rey semifinals is at the Bernabeu, and then Barcelona will be home in the second leg. Then over the weekend, Valencia at Barcelona on Sunday, Real Madrid at Real Betis on Sunday. One of the trickier games left for Real Madrid as they try and catch Barcelona. So keep your eye on that one. In Italy, Lazio at Napoli on Friday. Napoli are on pace basically to tie/break if you round up. At least last time I checked, they were on pace to break, but they weren't actually. I think the record is 102, and if you extend out their points pace, it's 102.9 or something. They could have the best season in the history of Serie A. So there's that. And obviously Lazio trying to secure a European spot, trying to get into the Champions League next season. Udinese at Atalanta on Saturday. AC Milan at Fiorentina on Saturday. Lecce at Inter on Sunday. And your other high-profile matchup, Juventus at Roma on Sunday. Trying to include all the teams fighting for the European spots there. In Germany, your big game is Friday, Red Bull Leipzig at Borussia Dortmund. Leipzig hanging around in the title race. Dortmund You're at home. You have to have, I would argue, you have to have 3 points here, just because you can't go into Bayern having to win. But if you can just keep putting together wins, they're the most informed team in the world. They can find a way to keep going. Maybe just maybe this becomes a really interesting final, 2 weeks of the season. So that it's one of the biggest games left. They get it at home. Obviously, the Red Bull Leipzig can be really tricky. We'll see what happens there. Bayern then go to Stuttgart on Saturday, and Cologne travel to Union Berlin also on Saturday. Those are your three teams up there in the title race. In France, Lille at Lens on Saturday, two of the teams fighting for Champions League spots. Nantes at PSG, Monaco at Troyes, and Marseille at Rennes. Those are all your teams up at the top of the table. PSG, dominant win over Marseille last weekend. So to me, that kind of finishes the title race. Maybe Marseille can find a way to hang in there and make it interesting. I doubt it, but we'll see what happens. And then finally, Major League Soccer. Just picking some of the games I'm most interested in this weekend. That starts with Portland at LAFC. Unfortunately, we didn't get to see either LA team because of the weather. So this will be LAFC's debut without Gareth Bale, without Tito Arango. Toronto at Atlanta. Can the Atlanta performance be better? Can the Toronto performance be better? Very curious about that. Can Atlanta start the season with 2 wins? Got another opportunity at home. I am fascinated by that game. Nashville at New York Red Bulls. Just two of the teams I think are two of the better teams in the Eastern Conference. Again, the Red Bulls trying to pick up their first points of the season. Nashville trying to go 2 for 2. Philadelphia at Inter Miami. What does Inter Miami kind of do for an encore? They picked up that first win. Can they start building some consistency? Can the Union go pick up a road win? What do these two teams look like in round 2? Cincinnati at Orlando. Another really interesting one for me. These are two of the kind of sexy picks, if you will, in the East that people are really high on. I'm also high on Cincinnati, not so high on Orlando. But Orlando off to a good start, gets another home game here. And then Charlotte at St. Louis. St. Louis gets their home opener. Should be a phenomenal atmosphere and a winnable game. Charlotte really struggled on the road last season. Can St. Louis go 2 for 2? So plenty to look forward to in Major League Soccer this weekend. That is all for the Touchline Talk Show. Thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure to hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you next time.